Beabe, and for today's video, I am going to share my reflection about the two topics, which is the Torrentera course module in readings in Philippine history, and the second is the Philippine history source book from prelim to finals coverage with the subject History 11, reading in the Philippine history. So let's start.
3, 2, 1.
And my first reflection, lesson 1, an introduction to Philippine historiography, sources and their courses. And ang ako ang gigamit ani na mode is the mirroring, which is that in this topic, the many different places where historical information can be found is the primary focus of this piece. And there is not a single historical source, but rather a large number of historical sources, which acts as evidence that particular events took place in the past. In the same way that you are, I am writing in diaries and remembering significant events that have occurred in my life in order for me to be able to remember it while I'm reading this in the present and in the years to come. So it was said in the piece that the majority of the historical sources that we are used are written texts, and primary sources status is given to the written document that I keep, so which is called the diary na ako ang gibuhat. Documents, physical items, and oral or video reports were provided by an individual or group who was present at the time and location being described all fall under this category according to the definition. The second reflection is the lesson 2, History of the Philippine Islands. So, ang akong gigamit ani na mode is a microscope. They support themselves in certain clearings and by planting rice, which they are very skillful and certain. So, na siya ako ang ikuha na phrase. And this had piqued my interest due to the fact that it led me to believe that some of our ancestors had gained knowledge of farming in earlier decades, and this is one of the works that up to this generation, so napagod na siya karon sa na generation and nagakontinue gihapon siya na makatabang sa ato, particularly to sectors that have been excluded. Planting of crops such as rice or corn is still preferred in rural regions since it requires only a small number of personnel to farm the land, and the small farmers are able to earn cash and provide their family with the items they need as a result of this. So their expertise in farming and dedication to their profession inspire me to work as hard as I can, both mentally and physically, both with my studies and the responsibilities that I have at home. And it helped me talaga na makatabang siya sa tuang tanan o sa kuang pag-eskwela. So, let's move forward in the lesson 3. The third reflection is entitled The Manunggol Jar. So, ang akong gigamit ani na mood is mirroring. So, it being discussed is all about the Manunggol Jar, which reflects our ancestors o kanang ginatuuhan nato mga religious beliefs. So this article focuses on the finding of the ancient Manunggol Jar and examines its significance. So because of the finding of this relic, the cultural and traditional histories of the ancient people who used to live in the southwest of Palawan have been pieced together. So it has been determined that this burial jar was located precisely in a Neolithic burial site, and that the time period that it's originated from is between 890 and 710 BC. And the various symbols that can be discovered in this masterpiece nag-represent siya og different tradition, and most prominent belief that the forefathers who created this jar held is that there is life after death. So the idea that there is another life waiting for us beyond this one is central to many world religions, including our own, that there is a paradise and that hell also waits for people, and that as consequences of our former life, we will be moved to different locations for judgment. And because of this idea, I've been curious about what it would be like to live during the time period in which the manunggul jar was utilized, and as well as the prayers and ceremonies that would been or have been performed both before and after the burial. So I believe that this holds some significance in relation to my belief, and additionally, there is a connection since when we pass away, their bodies will be placed in coffins similar to what they did before they died. And in addition, I am positive that this belief will be handed down from generation to generation because it is important to give proper burial to those who have passed away, making it also a sign of respect and love. The fourth reflections is lesson 4, the Laguna copper plate. So, ang akong gigamit ani na mode is a microscope. So, ang phrase na ako dari is has sparked a reassessment of the history of the Philippines prior to the coming of the Spanish, in particular the 10th century AD, and the archipelago's relationship with the rest of the Southeast Asia. So this statement makes it very evident that Laguna copper plate played an important part in the discovery of the history of the Philippines. So because the inscription gave diverse terms and phrases that originated in these nations, this demonstrates that the Philippines had a prior tie to a variety of countries that were located in close proximity to them, so such as in India and Malaysia. And despite popular belief, the Spanish were not the first foreign culture to have an impact on the Philippines in recent history. So my thoughts immediately went to the other objects that have not yet been found after the discovery of this inscription. It's possible that their very existence will alter how we think about things that happened in the past, particularly sa tuang sarili na history. And artifacts are very important in ascertaining the truth or the facts that remained in the things or documents that they are contained in, and they have made a significant contribution to our society in these modern times. And the fifth reflections is the lesson 5, duties of the Katipunan of the Sons of the People, which is in short KKK. Ang akong gigamit ani na mode is microscope. And ang phrase na akong napili, which is engraved on the heart of the conviction that to die for the liberation of the country from enlistment is the highest honor and fortune. So one of the responsibilities of the Katipunan of the Sons of the People is to carry out that statement, because it demonstrates such unselfish love for the people. That line has a profound impact on me and has even melted my heart. Everyone who is carrying out that responsibility runs the risk of losing their own life in order to achieve the goal of achieving freedom for all Filipinos, or liberating all Filipino from enslavement. And the implications for society, in my view, are that we ought to be proud of and respect. So this is the one of the prescribed task of the son of the people. This pique my interest, since should I ever become a enforcement officer, I will be required to take an oath to serve and to die for my nation. So this did amplifies that patriotism and have been successful in completing their responsibilities, and we reap the benefits of their unending love for their nation and their drive to achieve freedom, in part because of their actions. And if against all odds the moment should come when history is forced to repeat itself, I would be ready to protect and to fight for our nation in the same way that the Katipuneros of the past had done in the past. Let's move forward to the first topic of Philippines History Sourcebook, entitled Pre-16th Century of Philippines Reading Materials. So, ang akong napili na subtopic, which is daghan man ni siya pero isa akong gipili, titled is The Kalantiaw, The Code That Never Was. So, ang akong gamit ani na mood is the telescoping. The Kalantiaw, the code that never was, is that the penalty for breaking the code of Kalantiaw were quite severe. It includes things like cutting off the fingers, lacerating the skin with thorns, being exposed to ants, swimming for 3 hours, drowning while weighted down with stones, being beaten to death, or being burned, boiled, stoned, crushed with weights, cut to pieces, or thrown to crocodiles as a last resort. So this acts as a general deterrent to the population as a whole. It is afraid that they will commit crimes such as theft. So there are still some countries like Japan that use such barbaric punishment as amputation of a finger for thieves. So this is not fair, yet this is how they will be punished for their actions. So the fact that some people want to reinstate the death sentence in this country also contributes to the rise of their consensus issue, and I was against it because both of us, as a student of criminology and as a young person, I have always believed that anyone deserves a second opportunity in life, regardless of how terrible the crime was. So this must take place simultaneously with everything else, or through the court system, and that it is the contrary to our religious beliefs, regardless of the reasons why God considers murder to be a sin. Because according to our faith, murdering is always. And the second topic in Philippine History Source Book is titled 16th to 18th Century Philippine, and ang gigamit ani na mode is telescope. So daghan man na siya topics. Akong gipili is costumes of the Tagalogs, and this article touches on topics that are relevant to the social order as well as the status of various members of society. So this is essay taught me that even in the ancient times, there were people of the royal lineage, people of the middle class, people of the poor, and people who were the poorest of the poor. This distinction has been maintained ever since, and this inscription also discussed that practice of enslavement as well as the employment of children in labor. On the other hand, it is still very common these days, despite the fact that there are laws that were passed to penalize offenders who perform such indefensible acts. And there are still some people who continue to do it because it gives them pleasure. So this has an impact on me as a student and as a young person, because despite the fact that I did not personally go through this experience with my own family, I was once a child. If I were to imagine that something like this had happened to me in my younger years or even to my younger siblings, I would go crazy. A child has the right to be released from these unfair conditions, so they should not be forced to work hard jobs to make a living, and children need education. And the third topic in Philippine History Sourcebook, 19th century Philippines, and ang akong gigamit ani na mode is microscope. So the subtopic is the causes of the distress of the Philippines. Ang ako ang nakuha na phrase is, they are taught how to pray but never to work. So this particular statement was made by Graciano Lopez Saina during his speech. This reminds me of the saying, nasa Diyos ang awa, nasa tao ang gawa. So my parents instilled in me from the time I was a young child that in addition to devoting myself to attending church, I should also work for what I pray for. They explained that to me that prayers are pointless if they are not accompanied by actions that are consistent with what you are asking for in your prayers. If I want something, I have to put in the effort to get it. So prayer is asking the Lord for guidance, but necessarily expecting that He will do it for us. So I need to put in the effort to achieve that goal. And additionally, this needs to be applied to every single member of our community, because some people put all of their faith in their prayers, and if they don't get the answers they're hoping for, and their beliefs will shift as a result. So people should make a very effort to avoid acquiring this mindset, since it will inevitably result in them becoming despairing and mentality unstable. Kay usay man gud ang uban kay naga-pray lang sila, wala sila ingon na buhat jud kanang dapat man jud na kung magbuhatag mga masay gusto na to Panginoon sa Ginoo, dili ang silang tag-ask, silang tagpangayo, dapat mulihok pud ta for us na i-guide pud ta sa Ginoo, ihatag sa Ginoo kung unsa nga to ang ginapray sa iyaha. And the fourth topic, entitled 1896 Philippine Revolution. So ang napili na ko na subtopic is the titled, ang dapat mabatid ng mga Tagalog. Microscope ang gamit ako na mode, and ang kaginhawaan ay hindi darating at hindi mangyayari mula sa mga Espanyol. So before the Spanish colonial administration acquired control of the Philippines, Andres Bonifacio was the one who made this assertion. So he asserted that the lifestyles of Filipinos were quite good, as were their relationships to the Japanese in terms of the trading of resources and goods. So they controlled the Philippines for a very long time, during which country's population endured the greatest amount of suffering possible. So Bonifacio always emphasized to his people the importance of standing up against this injustice, and it is better off to fight or try something to happen than to never do anything at all. So which is why he feels it is best to come we came up with the insurgency against Spanish government. So he believes this because it is better than never doing anything at all. So it is relevant to the society for today that the Philippines should not rely on what other countries considered us to be implying about ourselves. Accept the acceptance of what is ours and who we are is the first step toward development. As an alternative to favoring chocolates like Toblerone that are sourced from other countries or regions, we could consume things like tablilla that are produced in our region or country, and this seemingly insignificant changes will serve as a stepping stone on the path toward a more developed economy for our country. And now, let's move forward to our midterm discussion in the topic Torrentera course module in readings in the Philippine history and lesson 6, which is entitled Act of Declaration of the Philippine Independence, is being discussed is the official declaration of Philippine independence, which emphasizes that we are and have the right to be free and independent, that we have to cease to have any allegiance to the crown of Spain, that all political ties between us are and should be completely severed and annulled, and that, like other free and independent states, we enjoy the full power to make peace and war, conclude commercial treaties, enter alliances, and regulate business. So, in that matter, I can say that this is somehow connected to me because without this act of declaration of the Philippine independence, I could not now enjoy the right to liberty, travel, communicate, education, and other free things that I enjoy. So, the event of June 12, 1898 left an indelible mark on my heart, not only for me but for all the Filipinos of what happened before. So today we have been enjoying the essence of independence. So mo nang napuntay ka man ana og day sa nanatay Independence Day. So the seventh reflection, which is the lesson 7 entitled 1899 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines in Malolos Convention. So, ang akong gigamit ani na mode is microscoping or microscope. So, ang phrase na ako ang gikuha pod is that according to Article 7 of the 1899 Constitution, no Filipino or foreigner shall be detained nor imprisoned except for the commission of a crime and in accordance with law. So, this has to do with the practice of arbitrary detention, which is defined as the arrest and the privation of liberty of a person outside of the bounds of nationally recognized laws or international standards. So this situation falls under this category, and there have been reports of police brutality that have been reported by a variety of television companies. And some of these reports detail instances of arbitrary detention. And um, I am a student of criminology, and it is obvious to me that this is worrisome and alarming. So even now, I have to ask myself if I will be um, if I will one day join the ranks of people who commit police misconduct. As a result, I committed to doing everything in my power to save to service justice, as well as the Filipino whose lives lives have been negatively impacted by the public authorities. And next reflection is lesson 8, entitled Treaty of Peace between the United States of America and the Kingdom of Spain. So, Treaty of Paris. Yung gamit na ko ani na mode is mirror or mirroring. So, after suffering defeat in the Spanish-American War in 1898, Spain ceded its long-standing colony in the Philippines to the United States of America in accordance with the terms of the Treaty of Paris. So, as a sociological implication, an agreement on peace talks or a treaty is essential to maintain tranquility within the state. So, exactly, with the conflict between the administration of the Philippines and the MILF over a decentralized government regarding the Treaty of Paris, the United States bought the Philippines from the Spanish Empire for the equivalent of $20 million, which resulted in the Philippines' independence from Spanish rule. So although it is extremely satisfying to have finally been liberated after 330 years of being colonized by a single empire. So this does not indicate that the United States will allow us to stand on our 2 feet. Even now, they constitute a form of manipulation. So they run the country because the United States believes that if they let us rule our own, it would devolve into chaos because we have no idea how to run a country effectively. But being a native Filipino, I have no doubt in my mind that we are capable of running our own government if only um, they would trust us with the responsibility. However, in order to advance their own self-interest, and they deceive us and bought us from Spain so that they could gain from our labor. And in order to acquire our natural resources, minerals, gold, products, and other items of a similar nature. So the ninth reflection, which is the lesson 9, entitled Hysterical Retraction Controversy. And ang akong gamit ay na mode is microscope. So ang phrase na akong ikuha or akong napili is, in earlier years, this controversy had already achieved widespread exposure among Filipinos. So the man who is now revered as the Philippines' national hero, Dr. Jose P. Rizal, struggled with his relationship to the Catholic Church in his earlier years. So both Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo are credited to him as their creator. So this literary work evolved, became his weapon of choice for clandestinely infiltrating the Spanish regime and in particular the friars. So through the publication of these works, he exposed the hypocrisy and corruption of priesthood. So as a result, people in the Philippines rose out against the Spanish authority. Because of this, it occurred to me that a fight does not necessarily have to take the shape of a physical confrontation. Instead, it may take the form of writing or the use of knowledge to attack one's adversaries. So, and as a consequence, this is a significantly more effective strategy than engaging in physical conflict on one's own. So there is an intelligence group that acts as the organization's brain, and similar to what you may find in an organization. Example like the PNP or the PMA, and they were in charge of the team's planning, organization, and like the decision making in order to achieve more favorable results. So let's move forward to my reflection in lesson 10, entitled Convention between the United States of America and Great Britain, delimiting the boundary between the Philippine archipelago and the state of North Borneo, 1930. So ang akong gamit ani na mode, the microscope. So the colonists who later became the United States battled the British because they desired independence from Britain. So they resisted the British because the taxes that British imposed on them were unreasonable. So, and they did not have self-government. They could be helpful in the dispute between China and the Philippines, as it has the purpose of delimiting boundaries as stated in Article 3, which states that all islands to the north and east of the said line and all islands and rocks traversed by the said line. So it should there be any such shall be belong to the Philippine archipelago, and all islands to the south and west of the sideline shall belong to the state of North Borneo. So despite the fact that a judgment has been rendered in regard to that issue, so the struggle that has been going on between our nation and China has not been resolved, and because of its position, it was obvious that the Philippines possessed the Spratly and Scarborough shoals alternatively on the map, and it was obvious that it was part of the Philippines area of responsibility. And now let's move forward to our midterm coverage in Philippine History Source Book, which is topic 5, entitled Philippine-American War. So, ang akong gamit ay na mode is microscope. So, daghan man siya mga subtopic. Ang ako rang gipili is Liberty Poems. So, Old Glory, New Shame, written by Francis Ellingwood Abbott. Shame on this last for the golden dust, for commerce and markets, in which false trust. So, his poetry makes it abundantly evident that he is accusing the American administration of having an imperialistic ambition to colonize other countries. So, ang isa na siya ng mga countries is ang Philippines. So, this sentence brings to mind that the efforts by the United States to acquire the Philippines. So, the United States of America brought both our land and has since benefited from its riches, so including both tangible and intangible materials that they have used from us. So, in those Philippines who are eager for growth and have faith in the United States to teach and guide our nation to the best possible form of administration, and this is also true when it comes to making choices in our daily lives, because in the end, it is only ourselves who will either suffer or succeed based on how others perceive our enthusiasm or decisions. So we shouldn't let the perceptions of others scare us. So let's move forward in a final coverage in Lesson 11 entitled Minutes of the Proceedings on the National Territory of the 1971 Constitutional Convention. So, ang akong gigamit ani na mode is telescope. So, this article placed a strong emphasis on the national territory of the Philippines. So, the Philippines, on the other hand, claims that it obtained its current territorial boundaries, which are denoted on the map by what is known as the Philippine Treaty Limit. So, as a result of the following three treaties, first, the Treaty of Paris, which was signed between Spain and the United States on December 10, 1898, and the second of the Treaty of Washington, which was signed between the United States and Spain on November 7, 1900. And third, the treaty which was concluded between the United States and Great Britain. And this has the potential to became evidence that puts an end to the dispute that has existed between China and the Philippines regarding islands that China has always asserted belong to them. So, and being read is all about all other territories belonging to the Philippines by historic right or legal title, and including the territorial sea, airspace, subsoil, seabed, continental shelf, and other submarine areas over which the Philippines has sovereignty or jurisdiction. So, these are included in the national territory. The water surrounding, the connecting, and the, connecting the archipelagos islands are part of the Philippines' internal waterways. So, for me, this 1971 Constitutional Convention is relevant in response to the international issues we have faced, such as the rights of the Philippines over the islands being claimed by China. And I think that this document will help to argue the claim of what we have, because it was clearly written within the boundaries of our territorial extent. But however, given that our country is not strong enough to fight China rather, and the decision made by our president to have allegiance to China was a wise decision as well. Furthermore, these issues could still affect me because if this conflict continues, there is a possibility that it could become a chaos or war. As a criminology student and as a youth, this has affected me because I am a Filipino whose home is the Philippines, and the dispute of our country and other greatly affects us, for we are part of it. Lesson 12, entitled The Rule of Islam in the History of the Filipino People. So, ang akong gamit ani na mode is mirroring. So, even if the Spanish have not yet taken control of the Philippines, Islam history is intertwined with that of the Philippines. So, as a result of international trades conducted through Arab commerce, Chinese merchants were interested in the market and began to participate, and it has an impact on the political institutions of the Philippines. So, this was only one of the relatively few contributions that Islam made to the country. And this shows that Islam is still very much alive and well in their views, even in the contemporary day, despite the fact that their identities frequently subject them to prejudice and stereotyping, and the Muslims or those who follow Islam are violent, unjust, or nefarious. So this misunderstanding has been widespread as a result of certain armed group movements that include Muslims in the process of causing dispute, conflict, and war with the government. So my heart broke for the possibility that we are Muslims and that we have been subjected to such unfair treatment because of our religion. Mm, and it was terrible to make accusations against them and to paint them as monsters when in reality that they are not. So if we look back through history, we can see that they played an important part in a number of different areas, and their role in society as Muslims has an significant impact because most of them are faithful to their religion, which also contributes to peace in our country. And moreover, although I am not a Muslim or I'm not a pure Muslim, I'm just um, what we call that half, but I still consider them our brothers and sisters. I feel happy that I have met some friends who are Muslims in our place. And also my father is Muslim because it is fun to learn about their culture and beliefs as well.